Paris, December 1987. A black man in a tailored suit sits alone in a conference room overlooking the Eiffel Tower. His hands are shaking, not from fear, from rage. Across the table, 12 white European businessmen are staring at him like he doesn't belong. One of them leans forward. "Mr. Lewis," he says slowly, like he's talking to a child, "perhaps you don't understand how international business works." The man doesn't blink. He slides a document across the polished mahogany table. "Gentlemen," he says, his voice cold as winter, "I just bought your entire company." Silence. "You now work for me." The room erupts, shouting, accusations, disbelief. But the contract is signed, the deal is done, and history just witnessed something it would spend decades trying to forget. That man's name was Reginald F. Lewis, and what he did that day in Paris, it made him the first black person in human history to build a billion-dollar empire. Not inherit, not win, build. But here's the part that'll make your blood boil. You've probably never heard his name, not in school, not in documentaries, not even in Black History Month. Why? Because the system that tried to stop him also tried to erase him. But today, we're bringing him back. Buckle up. This story is about to flip everything you thought you knew about wealth, power, and who gets to win in America. Baltimore, Maryland, 1942. Reginald Francis Lewis is born into a world designed to break him. Segregated schools, whites-only water fountains, Jim Crow laws that said he was less than human. His family wasn't rich. His grandfather sold ice and coal just to survive. His mother worked as a waitress. His father, barely in the picture. But Reginald had something money couldn't buy, a mind that saw the world differently. While other kids played stickball in the alleys, Reggie was reading business magazines, legal journals, anything he could get his hands on. His grandmother noticed. "That boy's got something special," she'd whisper to neighbors. But special doesn't pay bills in 1950s Baltimore. And being black in America, that meant every door was locked, every opportunity stolen, every dream crushed before it could breathe. But Reginald refused to accept that. At Dunbar High School, he wasn't just smart, he was dangerously smart. Top of his class, captain of the football team, student body president. Teachers called him unstoppable. White school administrators called him too ambitious. You see, there was an unspoken rule back then. Black kids could be good, but not too good, not good enough to threaten the system. Reginald broke that rule every single day. He graduated with honors, applied to Virginia State University, got in, and that's where the first major twist happens. Reginald Lewis walks into Harvard Law School, not as a visitor, as a student. Let that sink in. A black kid from the Baltimore Project, at one of the whitest, most elite institutions in America. How'd he do it? Pure, ruthless strategy. See, Reggie knew the game was rigged. He knew white America would never give him anything. So he studied the rules, found the loopholes, and exploited every single one. At Virginia State, he didn't just study hard, he studied efficiently. He tracked which professors gave which exams. He memorized patterns. He turned education into a science. And when he applied to Harvard Law, he didn't just submit an application, he built a case. Recommendations from politicians, essays that proved he was already thinking like a lawyer, evidence that he wasn't just smart, he was inevitable. Harvard accepted him. The doors swung open. But what happened inside those walls? That's where the real battle began. Harvard Law in the 1960s was a war zone for black students. There were less than 20 in the entire school. Professors ignored them. Classmates isolated them. The message was clear. You don't belong here. But Reginald, he thrived on that energy. While other students crumbled under the pressure, he studied 18 hours a day. He memorized entire legal textbooks. He outworked everyone, outthought everyone. And by his second year, he was top of his class. White students started asking him for help. Professors who'd ignored him now called on him first. But here's what they never told you. Reginald wasn't just trying to succeed, he was building a blueprint that would let him do something no black person had ever done before: take over the business world. Reginald Lewis graduates from Harvard Law. He could have played it safe, joined a civil rights organization, become a public defender, made a comfortable living, but that's not why he went to law school. He went to law school to break into a world that had never seen someone like him: Wall Street. Let me paint you a picture. 1960s Wall Street was a whites-only club. No black executives, no black traders, no black lawyers at major firms. The entire financial system was built by white men for white men. And Reginald Lewis? He was about to kick the door down. He joined a small corporate law firm in Manhattan, not because he wanted to, because no big firm would hire him. That's right, Harvard Law graduate, top of his class, and white law firms still wouldn't touch him. So he took the job he could get, and he used it to study the game. Corporate acquisitions, mergers, leveraged buyouts. He watched white lawyers structure deals worth millions, and he realized something. The real power wasn't in practicing law, it was in owning the companies. So in 1970, at just 28 years old, Reginald made a move that shocked everyone. He quit his job and opened his own law firm, a corporate law firm, in Manhattan. Run by a black man. People thought he'd lost his mind. No one's going to hire a black corporate lawyer, they said. You'll be bankrupt in a year, they said. Reginald smiled and got to work. His firm was called Lewis & Clarkson, and within 2 years, it was representing Fortune 500 companies: Coca-Cola, General Foods, major airlines. White executives who wouldn't hire him as an employee were now paying him 6 figures to structure their deals. The irony was delicious. But Reginald wasn't satisfied, because he realized something else. Every deal he structured made his clients richer, but it kept him on the outside. He was still just the lawyer, not the owner, not the power player. That had to change. And in 1983, it did. Late night, 1983. Reginald Lewis sits in his office, surrounded by financial reports. He's been searching for months, looking for the perfect target, a company he can buy. Not with his own money, he doesn't have that kind of cash, but with borrowed money, a leveraged buyout. This is the part where you need to pay close attention, because what Reginald figured out changed everything. See, in the 1980s, a new kind of deal was taking over Wall Street. Rich white guys were borrowing massive amounts of money, using it to buy companies, then using the company's own profits to pay back the loans. It was basically financial alchemy, and it was making people obscenely wealthy. But there was one problem. It required access. Access to banks, access to investors, access to the old boys club. Things a black man in 1980s America did not have. But Reginald wasn't ordinary. He'd spent 15 years building relationships, proving himself, earning trust, and now he was ready to cash it in. He found his target, Macau Pattern Company, a small sewing pattern business, $22.5 million price tag. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't sexy, but it was perfect. Stable cash flow, loyal customers, easy to manage. Reginald put together a proposal, borrowed $1 million from investors, convinced a bank to loan him the rest, and on a cold morning in December 1983, he bought the company. Reginald Lewis, a black man from Baltimore, now owned a multi-million-dollar corporation. The news barely made a ripple. No front-page stories, no celebrations. The white business world shrugged. It's just a pattern company, they said. They had no idea what was coming. Reginald didn't just buy Macau, he transformed it, cut costs, streamlined operations, expanded into international markets. Within 4 years, he'd turned a dying company into a profit machine, and in 1987,
He sold it for $65 million. That's a $40 million profit from a single deal. And here's the kicker. He did it all while being systematically excluded from every major business network in America. No country clubs, no golf outings with CEOs, no handshake deals over whiskey. Reginald Lewis built his empire from the outside, and he was just getting started. Because the Macau deal, that was practice. What came next would change history. Picture this. It's 1987. Reginald just made $40 million. He's the most successful black businessman in American history, and most of America has no idea he exists. But that's about to change, because Reginald isn't done, not even close.
He's about to pull off a deal so audacious, so impossible, so historically massive that it'll make him a billionaire and force the world to see him. What happens next? It's the most important business deal you've never heard of. And it starts in the most unexpected place, Paris, summer 1987. Reginald Lewis steps off a plane in Paris. He's there for one reason, to buy Beatrice International Foods. Now, if you don't know what Beatrice was, let me explain. It was one of the largest food conglomerates in the world. Ice cream, meats, dairy products, sold in 31 countries across Europe, Asia, and Latin America. Annual revenues, $2.5 billion. That's not a typo, $2.5 billion. And Reginald Lewis, he wanted to buy the entire thing, with money he didn't have. Here's where the story gets insane. Beatrice was owned by Kohlberg Kravis Roberts, KKR, the most powerful private equity firm on the planet. They'd bought Beatrice in pieces and wanted to sell off the international division. Price tag? $985 million. That's almost $1 billion. And Reginald Lewis, a black man with $40 million in the bank, said, "I'll take it." The white executives at KKR literally laughed. "You," they said, "you're gonna buy Beatrice International? With what money?" Reginald didn't flinch. "I'll show you," he said, and then he went to work. What Reginald did next was financial genius. He structured a deal so complex, so creative, so absolutely brilliant that business schools still teach it today. Here's how it worked. Step 1. He borrowed $450 million from a group of banks. Step 2. He convinced his investors from the Macau deal to put in another $15 million. Step 3. He convinced KKR to finance part of the deal themselves. Think about that. He got the seller to loan him money to buy their own company. Step 4. He used Beatrice's projected future profits as collateral for the loans. In other words, he was buying the company with the company's own money, before he even owned it. It was legal, it was brilliant, and it was terrifying. Because if it failed, Reginald would lose everything. Not just his money, his reputation, his legacy, everything. December 1987, back in that Paris conference room, Reginald sits across from the Beatrice executives. They don't think he's serious. They don't think a black man from Baltimore can pull off the deal of the century. But then Reginald slides the contract across the table. $985 million. Signed, financed, done. The room explodes. European executives shouting in French. American lawyers scrambling to verify the documents. KKR partners staring at Reginald in disbelief. But the deal is real. The contracts are binding. And just like that, Reginald F. Lewis owns Beatrice International Foods. He is now the CEO of a company worth over $1.5 billion, making him the first black person in history to control a billion-dollar business. You'd think this would be front-page news everywhere. Black man makes history, shatters every barrier, becomes the wealthiest black person in America. But that's not what happened. Oh, the business press covered it. Forbes wrote a small article. The Wall Street Journal mentioned it in passing. But mainstream America? Crickets. No TV specials, no documentary crews, no parades or celebrations. Why? Because the story didn't fit the narrative. Black people weren't supposed to be billionaires. They were supposed to be athletes, entertainers, civil rights activists, not titans of global capitalism. So the story got buried, filed away, forgotten. But Reginald didn't care. He had work to do. From 1987 to 1992, Reginald Lewis ran Beatrice International like a machine. He traveled constantly, Paris, London, Madrid, Tokyo, managing 64 different companies across 31 countries. And he didn't just manage them, he dominated them. First year, revenues jumped to $1.8 billion. Second year, $2.2 billion. By 1992, Beatrice was doing nearly $2.5 billion in annual sales, and Reginald personally took home over $50 million in salary and dividends a year, making him not just the richest black person in America, but one of the richest people, period. But here's what made Reginald different from other billionaires. He never forgot where he came from. While he was buying companies in Europe, he was also funding scholarships for black students, donating millions to Howard University and Harvard Law, creating programs to help black entrepreneurs get access to capital, mentoring young black lawyers and business leaders. He gave away more than $10 million to black institutions, not for publicity. He did it quietly, because he believed in something bigger than himself. He believed his success had to open doors for others, that his wealth had to mean something. And it did. But tragically, he wouldn't get to see the full impact. January 1993. Reginald feels a pain in his side. He ignores it. Too busy, too much work to do. But the pain gets worse. He finally goes to the doctor. The diagnosis? Brain cancer. Aggressive, inoperable, terminal. The man who conquered Wall Street, who rewrote the rules of global capitalism, who shattered every barrier put in front of him, was given 6 months to live. Reginald Lewis died on January 19, 1993. He was 50 years old, too young, too soon, too much left to do. His funeral was attended by business leaders, politicians, and family, but the media coverage was minimal. A few obituaries, a mention on the evening news, and then silence. The world moved on, and slowly, deliberately, Reginald's story faded from public memory. Now here's the part that should make you furious. In the 30 years since Reginald Lewis died, his name has almost completely been erased. Not by accident, by design. Let me show you how. Schools don't teach him. Despite being the first black billionaire, his story isn't in textbooks, not in history classes, not in business classes, not even in most black history curriculums. Documentaries ignore him. There are hundreds of documentaries about American billionaires, Rockefeller, Carnegie, Gates, Bezos. But Reginald Lewis? 1 or 2 small films that almost nobody's seen. Business books skip him. Books about the 1980s business boom talk about Michael Milken, Carl Icahn, and Henry Kravis, all white men. Reginald's deal was bigger than most of theirs, but he's not mentioned. Even Black History Month forgets him. Every February, we celebrate the same heroes: MLK, Rosa Parks, Harriet Tubman, all deserving, all important. But where's the billionaire who proved black people could conquer capitalism? Missing, erased, forgotten. Why? Because his story is dangerous. It challenges every excuse, every limitation, every narrative about what black people can and can't do. His story says, you can come from nothing. You can face every form of systemic racism. You can be excluded from every network, every club,
every insider group, and you can still win. That message terrifies the people who benefit from inequality. Because if Reginald could do it, what's stopping anyone else? So they buried him, filed him away in the footnotes of history, hoped the world would forget. And for a while, it worked, but not anymore. So what can we learn from Reginald Lewis? What can his life teach us about success, resilience, and breaking barriers? Let me break it down. Lesson 1. The system won't give you anything. Take it. Reginald didn't wait for permission. He didn't wait for someone to let him into Harvard. He didn't wait for Wall Street to invite him in. He forced his way through every door. And when doors didn't exist, he built his own. Lesson 2. Master the game before you change it. Reginald spent years studying corporate law, learning how deals worked, understanding leverage, debt, equity, and cash flow. He didn't try to disrupt the system until he understood it better than anyone else. You can't break rules you don't know. Lesson 3. Use their tools against them. The leveraged buyout strategy Reginald used, it was invented by white bankers, designed to make rich people richer. Reginald took that tool and used it to become richer than almost all of them. He didn't create a new game, he beat them at their game. Lesson 4. Success isn't about you, it's about who comes after you. Reginald gave away millions, not to get his name on buildings, to make sure the next generation didn't have to fight as hard as he did.
He knew his wealth meant nothing if it didn't open doors. Legacy is what you leave behind. Lesson 5. The world will try to erase you. Don't let them. This is the hardest lesson. Reginald's story proves that success isn't enough. You can be the best, you can be the first, you can change history, and they'll still try to bury you. So you have to tell your own story, protect your own legacy. Make sure the next generation knows your name, because if you don't, no one else will. Here's the part they really don't want you to know. Reginald Lewis wasn't just a successful businessman. He was a threat to the narrative that capitalism is a white man's game, a threat to the idea that systemic racism makes wealth impossible, a threat to every excuse people use to justify inequality. Because Reginald proved something undeniable. Black excellence doesn't need permission, and the system hated him for it. There are stories that never made it to print, stories of white businessmen sabotaging Reginald's deals, stories of banks denying him loans even after he'd proven himself, stories of investors backing out at the last second because they didn't feel comfortable. Code for, we don't want a black man to succeed. But every time they knocked him down, he got back up. Every time they said no, he found another way. And every single time they tried to stop him, he won anyway. The truth is, Reginald Lewis shouldn't have succeeded. By every measure, every statistic, every historical trend, he should have failed. But he didn't. And that's why his story matters, because it proves that the barriers aren't real. They're not natural, they're not inevitable, they're man-made. And what man makes, man can destroy. So where is Reginald's legacy today? It's everywhere, even if you don't see it. Every black entrepreneur who raises venture capital, they're walking the path Reginald cleared. Every black CEO running a Fortune 500 company, they're standing on Reginald's shoulders. Every young black kid who dreams of building an empire, they're carrying Reginald's torch, even if they don't know his name. There's a business school at Harvard named after him now, the Reginald F. Lewis International Law Center. But most students walk past it without knowing who he was. There's a museum in Baltimore that bears his name, the Reginald F. Lewis Museum of Maryland African American History and Culture, but most people in Baltimore couldn't tell you what he did. His family established a foundation. His daughter wrote a book about him. Scholars study his deals. But the mainstream world,
Still silent, still erasing, still pretending he doesn't matter. But here's what they can't erase: the numbers. $985 million deal in 1987. That's equivalent to over $2.5 billion today. Adjusted for inflation, Reginald's net worth at the time of his death would be close to $1 billion, making him one of the wealthiest self-made Americans of his generation, black or white. And he did it in less than 10 years, starting from nothing. Those numbers don't lie. They can't be erased. They stand as permanent proof of what Reginald accomplished. And today, there's a new generation discovering him. Black entrepreneurs Googling first black billionaire, students writing papers about overlooked historical figures, podcasters and YouTubers bringing his story back to life. Reginald Lewis is being resurrected, one story at a time, one conversation at a time, one person at a time. And that terrifies the people who tried to erase him, because his story is proof that the system can be beaten, proof that barriers can be broken, proof that history can be rewritten by people who refuse to be forgotten. So let me ask you something. Why are you watching this right now? Is it because you want to be inspired? Is it because you're tired of the same old stories? Or is it because somewhere deep down you know you're capable of more than the world tells you? Because that's what Reginald Lewis represents. Not just wealth, not just success, possibility. The possibility that no matter where you come from, no matter what color your skin is, no matter how many doors get slammed in your face, you can still build something that lasts forever. Reginald didn't wait for the world to change. He changed it himself. He didn't ask for a seat at the table, he bought the whole restaurant. And when they tried to write him out of history, he'd already written himself into stone. Because here's the ultimate truth they don't want you to know. The greatest revenge isn't anger, it's success. Success so undeniable, so massive, so world-changing, that even when they try to forget you, the numbers won't let them. Reginald F. Lewis died January 19, 1993, buried in Baltimore, Maryland, but his legacy, immortal. Because every time a black entrepreneur closes a deal, every time a black CEO takes over a company, every time a black child dreams of building an empire, Reginald's spirit is there, whispering, "They told me it was impossible too. I did it anyway. Now it's your turn." History tried to bury Reginald Lewis, but here's what they forgot. You can't bury the truth. You can hide it, you can ignore it, you can exclude it from textbooks and documentaries and museums, but eventually, the truth finds its way out. And when it does, it's more powerful than ever. Reginald F. Lewis, the first black billionaire, the man history tried to forget. Remember his name, say it out loud, share this story, because every time you do, you're keeping his legacy alive, and you're proving that no matter how hard they try, some stories are too powerful to erase. When you see me, you see the struggle of a black man in America. Reginald Lewis. If this story moved you, don't just watch and forget. Share it. Comment below with someone who needs to hear this. And if you want more hidden black history that'll change the way you see the world, hit that subscribe button, because we're just getting started. The system wants you to forget these stories. We're making sure you never do. See you in the next one.